Hello, everyone. My name is EJ Renold, and I am presenting this audio recorded PowerPoint for you as part of the panel organised by Professor Carol Taylor on feminism and the posts. So the paper that we're going to share with you is published in a special issue of the Qualitative Research Journal just last week. So there is a full paper that accompanies our presentation, and it's called Posthuman Co-production, Becoming Responsible with What Matters. So in the paper, we introduce posthuman co-production as a post-qualitative research praxis that decenters the human and recenters matter. It's a praxis informed and inspired by new materialist posthuman feminisms in education, or fematerialism for short, and the breakdown of that term is here on the slide. So in our version of post-qualitative inquiry, a research problem is a kind of posthuman co-production that comes from a becoming with others, so it could be people, place, and objects. Problems then don't arise in advance of a project, and methodologies are not only developed to respond to a problem. Rather, methodologies are deeply implicated in creating problems, and in conducive contexts, they carry the potential to transform a problem and the world. Celia Lurie and Nina Wakeford have, for example, demonstrated how becoming inventive with methodologies can create what Celia Lurie theorizes in her new book as a problem space, a space that composes the problem again and again, itself forever changing, and with each return or revolution, something new might unfold. And it's in the capacity to both create and attune to the yield of a problem space that can give co-productive methodologies their constitutive force and capacity to contribute to the generative circulation of a problem. So how problems form and transform, and how we can draw upon the arts to cultivate a living ethics for becoming responsible with what unfolds, lies at the heart of our praxis. And the paper that we're going to share with you kind of shows, if you like, some of that praxis. So the research praxis we share in the paper has been developed through a deep immersion in place. Our site of engagement is Wales, and we map moments in a process of attuning to the potential of a lively relationships and sexuality education, policy and practice terrain, where myself, EJ, is deeply embedded and becoming more and more implicated with what unfolds. And it's a shared praxis which myself and Gabrielle, who's a second author, share and theorize quite regularly. So there are a number of sections in the paper, and what I'm going to briefly just provide a quick overview are the two kind of organizing concepts, queer responsibility from Barad, and the role of data fact, which we originally theorized in 2018, but have kind of expanded our take on it. What then follows are three fugal figurations that capture our praxis, and I'll try and briefly give you a flavor of each before concluding. So queer responsibility, Brad argues, involves paying attention to the ways in which phenomena are always becoming otherwise, what she terms the queerness of phenomena. The queerness of enabling and welcoming other ways of being, knowing, and responding in the field of relationships and sexuality education has multiple implications. The responsibility of becoming otherwise in this context involves cultivating the ability to make space and time for conducting research engagement activist projects designed to attune and communicate the experiences of children and young people in ever-changing micro and macro political contexts. As we share in the paper, this involves entangling with the often complex, volatile, and ever-differentiating world of how gender and sexuality education is mattering for diverse publics. Implicit in our research praxis is an ethical and political responsibility then to call out practices which subjugate or silence or sensationalize or simplify children and young people's experiences and try and stay with the trouble that comes to matter as events unfold. And there is always trouble. So like many post-qualitative art space youth researchers, and there are plenty of references in the paper, the art in our praxis is a processual, relational and transformational notion of art as way, drawing on Erin Manning. It's a process, it's a process of creating ethical political spaces for surfacing what matters. So Brad's call to become responsible has enabled us to recognise how our research praxis matters and to work with the effective politics of what comes to matter. And our concept of datafact has accompanied us on that journey. So very quickly then, as you can see on the slide here, datafact mixes data, art and activism in processes that make the mattering facts of experience visible to wider publics. The concept is deliberately ambivalent about being an object and a verb, the artful making of experiential facts. So the first half of the concept data, which is a hybrid of data and art, is an explicit intervention to trouble what counts as social science data. The second half, it kind of explicitly signals the post-human ethical, political, activist potential of what matter can do. So it's really kind of moving away from the illusion of objective, fixed, knowable and measurable social science facts. And actually, the examples I've given here, one is the making of a ruler skirt, the other one here is a chair. And it is about how the data fact can travel into different spaces and places, affect and touch those it comes into contact with. But in making the paper, we've extended our previous use and understanding of data fact to include really any matter, from visual arts objects to research reports and websites, as long as they're operating in a way that can carry transformative potential to agitate and enact change. And they've been really useful post-qualitative concepts for beyond the academy as they reanimate what research can do when ethical political creativity is folded into the mix. So I use this concept a lot with teachers in Wales. Okay, so in the paper, we give an overview of 3 fugal figurations. And this is an unfolding praxis over 6 years. It's a praxis that opens up research to its more than, rupturing individualistic, linear and neoliberal research impact agendas. And we trace the journey of how data facts in the 3 fugal figurations have become and continue to become micro-political enunciators, carrying what matters and enabling and enacting change. And I have quite a musical background, so we've been using this idea of the fugue, the Renaissance fugue in particular, as a kind of contrapuntal composition of multiple voices built upon a subject which unfolds and recurs in improvised form. So in our story, the subject of the fugue is the emergent field of relationships and sexuality education in Wales. And the multiple voices are the data facts that are tuned to and traverse the terrains of the problem space. Haraway captures the process of doing co-productive research as figuring, that is, practice and process are becoming with each other in surprising relay. So the first example we have called political data facts. And this is an assemblage of an emergent project called the Relationship Matters. It was a lunchtime project in a school in the South Wales Valleys. And the story in this example really gives the first heartbeat, if you like, of what a femmmaterialist co-productive practice looks like and feels like. And we show how that project, which began in a small space, unfolded into a school assembly and then unfolded into community activism of what we call the Valentine card heart activism. I can't go into much detail given the time for the presentations, but it was really a powerful moment for me. And as we were theorizing it with Gabrielle, it really was when I first recognized the limit to academic critique, given that we've been writing written and oral submissions of evidence, which became quite futile in the policy making process. So here, what we give emphasis to are data facts and how they create passages and ruptures in the usually acceptable kind of modalities of how academics and politicians work, uncovering a new problem space for how communication comes to matter. So it moves from a lunch group to a school assembly, and as I said, community arts activism. And the second example, which builds on that first journey, if you like, is what we call resourceful data facts. And this really gives the kind of story of the making and mattering of a youth activist resource called Agenda, which began as a young people's guide, and then over the years has really expanded into a resource, interactive resource for practitioners working in the field of relationships and sexuality education. So the praxis sort of started out in the Relationship Matters project, but was distilled, if you like, in the Agenda resource. So while many of the activities in the resource combine arts-based methods, it's Agenda's approach to creativity as this kind of processual making of matters, which functions as the beating heart of this fugal resource. So each case study opens up a range of issues to multiple variations for others to adapt and make their own. So over the years, the guide has become resourceful for both distilling and expanding a praxis, yet also eventful in platforming a praxis that continues to make 1,000 tiny data facts, if you like, that carry traces of what matters to young people in relation to gender and sexualities. And actually, since its launch, we've been learning how to enable data facts to touch, move, inform and transform multiple local and national political agendas through outreach workshops, conferences, and professional learning events. And each time we're alerted to how surfacing what matters creates trouble. And while you can get attacks, if you like, on the resource, on myself, on the people that use the resource, including policymakers, while these attacks kind of rattle and maybe still or flatline a flow, the more than human data facts generated through Agenda's praxis remain in the world and continue to have impact. So we've written about how Agenda in the paper takes root in the new sites and flourishes like a kind of living organism, attracting attention with unknown and known effects, while continuing to inform policy and practice. And that's where the final fugue, it talks about that journey, if you like, of this, what we're calling slow posthuman co-production. So the slide here, as you can see, just looks at some of those processes from 2015 up until the present day. And it's 6 years since that Relationship Matters project and the Valentine card activism took off. And over time, there's been an ongoing praxis to kind of carry on creatively co-producing data facts to inform what we call a living curriculum that both stays and starts with what matters for children and young people. And you'll see here in the overview that the images, if you like, can take hold in a government report, films, their return again in 2020 there when we're giving evidence. So resources, films, events, and so on. These data facts are lively and kind of always, they kind of carry a legacy, if you like, of the process and begin to matter in all kinds of ways. So we talk about this in the paper as the kind of sustainability of data facts to communicate and enact change, to continue to affect, to continue to impact. So in this way, they're participants in a slow praxis of embodied and materially embedded more than human co-production. So to conclude then, in our post-qualitative, post-human, co-productive praxis of engagement that we've shared in the paper, we give prominence to the role of data facts to make things happen. Each fugal figuration that we share assembles a data fact as a figure of ongoingness, and together they chart a rhizomatic journey. So it's about how they kind of launched into the world and how they continue to affect and give rise to a whole range of becomings, if you like, reanimating evidence in Parliament and governmental expert panels, creating RSE practices and resources that enable young people to express what matters to them, and through artful learning workshops to inspire teachers to embed a living RSE curriculum as an ongoing creative process, or what we call a living RSE pedagogy. And like the improvisation in the Renaissance fugue, artifacts can take root and fly in ways unknown, including the unwanted and uninvited forces like toxic trolling and targeted attacks from within social media and live protests outside the Senate. But while participants feel the intensity or attack, posthuman artifacts continue to affect even when queer responsibility feels humanly unbearable. Artifacts will continue to sound the cries of what matters for children and young people in RSE. And we're attuned to some, and others continue on their way below the radar of conscious awareness, affecting, worlding, and living otherwise. As Manning writes, the unfolding affects us, moves us, directs us, but it does not belong to us. And if you'd like to read the paper, please get in touch with my email address, renold@cf.ac.uk, and I look forward to the live session at the conference.